fifth and the last form of business organization that we are going to discuss here is joint stock company. How do we define joint stock company? It can be defined as an artificial person created by law having a separate legal entity, perpetual succession and a common seal. Now the definition itself is, it explains the different features and characteristics of a joint stock company. Number one, it is an artificial person. Artificial person means it has an entity, it has an existence of its own, but it is not like a natural person. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, right? But it exists. It is an artificial person as it is a creation of law. Artificial person created by law having a separate legal entity, meaning the business organization, company is separate from the owners. Company is separate from its owners. There is a distinction between owners and ownership and the management. Then perpetual succession. Perpetual succession meaning it continues to exist year after year. The death, lunacy, etc. of the members of the company or the owners of the company, that is the shareholder, it does not affect the existence of the company. It still continues to exist. And a common seal. Since it is an artificial person capable of entering into contracts, signing contracts, capable of suing people, being sued by people, right? But because it is an artificial person, it cannot sign contracts on its own, right? So the official signature of the company in the form of a stamp, right? That is called as a common seal. So I hope now the definition of company will become clear to you. It can be defined as an artificial person, right, created by law, having a separate legal entity, perpetual succession and common seal. What are the features of company? Number one, separate legal entity. मैंने बोला था separate legal entity and limited liability, ठीक है, and continued existence. ये तीनों कब आ जाते हैं features? When it is compulsory for a business organization, for any particular form of business organization to get itself registered under any particular act. Here, company is also compulsorily required to be registered under Companies Act 2013. तो जैसे ही उसका registration compulsory हुआ, ठीक है, compulsory है इसका registration, तो तीन features automatically आ जाएंगे: separate legal entity, limited liability and continued existence. Separate legal entity, that means the company has an entity separate from that of its owners. It is considered as a separate person from the owners, right? It is an artificial person. It is not like a natural person which can be seen, touched and felt. It is an artificial person created by law which is capable of entering into contracts, signing deals, okay, suing people and be sued by people. Clear? Then formation. It is formed as per the provisions of the Companies Act 2013. Whatever legal formalities are required to be performed under the Act, they have to be necessarily performed. Then perpetual succession. That is, the company continues to exist despite the death, lunacy or bankruptcy of any of its members. Right? Then control and ownership. Now, the ownership of the company, it lies with the shareholders, right? The ownership of the company lies with the shareholders, right? But the control of the company lies with the management. The control of the company lies with the management. That means, what does it mean? That our shareholders kaun hote hain? Basically, how does a company get the money? Okay? I think if you've seen that movie Guru, right? There the concept of the company has been beautifully described, right? Wherein this guy Abhishek, he tells people that apna paisa मेरी कंपनी पैसा लगाओ और मालिक बन जाओ. What does that mean? That you contribute. There are huge number of people all over the world, right? We ask them, even if one person, even if each person contributes of about 1,000 rupees, can you imagine the amount of financial pool that I'm going to be creating, right? Although each person's contribution is quite small, and if he was, to invest that money himself in one of his own ventures, that would not mean anything. That would not mean anything, right? But if I invest 1,000 rupees in a company wherein there are millions of people investing in that company, so there's going to be a huge pool of financial resource that is going to be created for that company. Entire capital of the company is divided into equal units called as shares, right? And the shareholders are nothing else but they are the owners of the company. So there is not one owner of the company, there are millions and zillions of the owners of the company, right? But because the owners of the company are spread over a wide geographical area, what they do is they select their representatives. They select their representatives in the form of board of directors. Right, they select their representatives, right? Then their representatives, that is in terms of the directors, okay? They are the ones who take the major decisions for the company. It is not the owners who take the decisions for the companies, but it is the board of directors who take the decisions for the managing the affairs of the company, right? So when we talk about control and ownership, ownership lies with the shareholders. Okay? Ownership is going to lie with the shareholders, but it is managed. Who is going to manage the organization? It is going to be managed by the board of directors. It is going to be managed by the board of directors. Then comes limited liability. I told you, when an organization is registered under any particular act, the liability of its members is going to be limited to the amount of capital that they have contributed. अगर मैंने 1000 रुपए लगाए एक कंपनी में, तो मेरे डूबेंगे भी 1000 रुपए सिर्फ. That's it. Not more than that. My personal assets are not going to be involved. Then I explained common seal. Because company is an artificial person, it cannot sign contracts on its own. So therefore, there is a stamp, right, which acts as the official signature of the company, that is called as a common seal. जब तक company के documents पे वो common seal नहीं होगी, it will not considered as legal. Then risk bearing. यहाँ पे risk bearing is relatively less. Why? Because the risk is spread, ठीक है, amongst all the shareholders. Risk is spread amongst all the shareholders, so therefore the risk to be borne by every single shareholder is relatively less. Last is transferability of the shares. Shares can easily be transferred in the name of anyone else, right? So